Princess Zara stood at the edge of her palace balcony, watching the twin moons rise over the crystal mountains of her home planet. Her silver skin glowed softly in the moonlight, and her violet eyes reflected the stars above. She was beautiful, by any standard, but beauty meant nothing when you couldn't give your family what they wanted most. At 23 years old, Zara had lived with shame for the past 5 years. Every Catherian woman was expected to bear children by age 20. It was their most sacred duty, especially for someone of royal blood. But Zara was different. The royal healers had examined her countless times, running test after test. Their conclusion was always the same: she would never have children. In Catherian society, a woman who couldn't bear children was considered broken. For a princess, it was even worse. The royal bloodline depended on healthy heirs to continue ruling the empire. Zara's father, King Theron, had made his disappointment clear from the day she received her diagnosis. "You are no daughter of mine," he had said that terrible day. "A princess who cannot produce heirs is worthless to this empire." Those words still haunted her dreams. From that moment, everything changed. Her younger sister Lyra became the favorite child, the chosen heir. Zara was pushed aside, given meaningless ceremonial duties while Lyra learned to rule. At royal gatherings, nobles would whisper behind their hands when Zara walked by. She heard the cruel names they called her: the empty princess, the barren rose, the royal mistake. Zara tried to find purpose in other ways. She studied languages, science, and diplomacy. She became fluent in 12 different alien languages and could negotiate trade agreements better than most of her father's advisors. But none of that mattered. In her father's eyes, she was a failure. The palace felt like a prison. Every day reminded her of what she couldn't do, what she couldn't be. Her own mother barely spoke to her anymore, too ashamed to acknowledge her eldest daughter's condition. Only the palace servants showed her kindness, and even they pitied her more than respected her. Everything changed when the humans from New Terra sent a message to the Catherian court. For 30 years, the two species had fought over territorial boundaries in the Outer Rim. Thousands had died in the conflicts, trade routes were disrupted, and both civilizations suffered from the endless fighting. But now the human colony wanted peace. They proposed a cultural exchange program as the first step toward ending the war. One representative from each species would live among the other for 2 years, learning their ways and building understanding between the worlds. When King Theron received this proposal, Zara saw a spark of cruel calculation in his eyes. Here was the perfect solution to his problem. He could appear generous and diplomatic while getting rid of his embarrassing daughter. "The humans want a cultural exchange," he announced to the royal council. "I believe Princess Zara would be perfect for this role. She has studied their languages and customs extensively." The council members exchanged knowing glances. Everyone understood what was really happening. This wasn't an honor. It was exile disguised as diplomacy. Zara felt her heart sink, but she kept her expression neutral. She had learned long ago not to show weakness in front of the court. "I would be honored to serve the Empire in this way, Your Majesty," she said formally. Her father smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Excellent. You will depart for New Terra within the month. Consider it a gift to our new human friends." A gift. That's all she was to him. Something to be given away when it became convenient. The news of her departure spread quickly through the palace. Some courtiers pretended to be sad to see her go, but Zara could see the relief in their eyes. The awkward reminder of royal failure would finally be gone. Princess Lyra was the only one who seemed genuinely upset. Despite their father's favoritism driving a wedge between them, Lyra still cared for her older sister. "You don't have to do this," Lyra said privately. "I could speak to father, convince him to send someone else." Zara shook her head. "No, sister. This is for the best. Maybe among the humans I can find some purpose." Lyra hugged her tightly. "Promise me you'll find happiness there. Promise me you'll stop letting father's words define who you are." Zara promised, though she wasn't sure she believed it herself. The journey to New Terra took 3 weeks aboard a diplomatic vessel. Zara spent most of the time studying human culture and preparing for her new role. She had learned their language years ago, but now she practiced speaking it until she could sound almost native. When she finally arrived at New Terra, she was amazed by how different everything looked. The human colony was built into the side of massive cliffs overlooking a purple ocean. The architecture was nothing like the crystal spires of her homeworld. Everything was made of metal and stone, practical rather than beautiful. Dr. David Chen was waiting for her at the spaceport. He was the colony's leading expert on alien biology and had been chosen as her guardian and guide. Zara had expected someone cold and clinical, but David surprised her with his warmth. "Welcome to New Terra, Princess Zara," he said with a genuine smile. "I hope you'll find our world as fascinating as we find yours." David was in his early 30s, with kind brown eyes and graying hair at his temples. He had lost his wife in one of the border conflicts years ago, something Zara learned from the briefing files. Despite his personal loss, he showed no hostility toward her. "Please, just call me Zara," she said. "I'm here to learn about your people, not to maintain royal protocols." David's smile widened. "Then welcome to your new home, Zara." As they drove through the colony, David pointed out various landmarks and explained how human society worked. Zara was fascinated by their democratic systems and their emphasis on individual achievement rather than bloodline status. "On Cytheria, your birth determines your entire life," she said. "Here it seems people can become whatever they choose." "That's the idea," David replied. "Though it's not always that simple in practice. But we do believe everyone has value, regardless of where they come from, or what they can or cannot do." Those words hit Zara harder than David could have known. For the first time in years, she felt a spark of hope. Maybe, just maybe, she could find a place where her worth wasn't measured by her ability to bear children. Her new home was a comfortable apartment overlooking the colony's central district. It was smaller than her palace rooms, but felt warmer, somehow. David had stocked it with books about human history and culture, along with some earth plants that had been adapted to New Terra's soil. "I thought you might enjoy learning about our agricultural methods," he said. "I understand Cytherian plants are quite different from ours." Zara was touched by his thoughtfulness. When was the last time someone had considered her interests rather than her obligations? As the days passed, Zara began to experience something she had never known: acceptance. The humans she met treated her with respect and curiosity, rather than pity or disappointment. They asked about her culture, her experiences, and her opinions. They seemed genuinely interested in who she was as a person. Dr. Chen became her closest friend during those early weeks. He was patient with her questions and never made her feel foolish for not understanding human customs. When she expressed interest in his scientific work, he invited her to visit his laboratory. "Most of our research focuses on adapting Earth species to New Terra's environment," he explained as he showed her around. "But we've also been studying Cytherian biology, trying to understand how your people have adapted to your world's unique conditions." Zara found herself fascinated by the scientific approach. On Cytheria, medicine and biology were dominated by ancient traditions and rigid thinking. Here, humans constantly questioned, experimented, and pushed boundaries. "Would you like to assist with some of our research?" David asked. "Your insight into Cytherian physiology could be invaluable." For the first time in years, Zara felt truly useful. She began spending her days in the laboratory, working alongside David and his team. Her royal education had included extensive study of biology, and she quickly proved herself to be a capable researcher. The work was challenging and rewarding. Zara found herself laughing more than she had in years. The humans treated her as an equal, valuing her contributions and respecting her intelligence. She began to remember who she had been before her father's rejection had crushed her spirit. But even as she found new purpose and happiness, Zara couldn't shake the feeling that this was all temporary. She was still the broken princess, still the daughter who could never give her family what they wanted. The humans might accept her now, but What would happen when they learned the truth about her condition? She kept her secret carefully hidden, letting people assume she was simply focused on her diplomatic duties, rather than personal relationships. But sometimes, late at night, she would look up at the stars and wonder if she would ever truly belong anywhere. Little did she know that her time on New Terra would change everything, not just for her, but for both of their worlds. The princess, who had been cast aside as worthless, was about to discover just how wrong everyone had been about her true potential. 6 months had passed since Zara arrived on New Terra, and she could hardly recognize herself anymore. The sad, broken princess who had left Cytheria was gone. In her place stood a confident young woman who smiled freely and spoke her mind without fear. Every morning she would wake up excited about the day ahead. Working in Dr. Chen's laboratory had become the highlight of her existence. She was no longer just observing human science, she was contributing to it. Her unique understanding of Cytherian biology had already led to 3 major breakthroughs. In their research, David had noticed the change in her too. The quiet, formal princess who had arrived months ago had transformed into someone vibrant and curious. She asked endless questions, challenged their assumptions, and often came up with solutions that none of the human researchers had considered. "You know," David said one afternoon as they worked side by side, "I think you've taught us more about science than we've taught you about humanity." Zara looked up from her microscope, a warm smile spreading across her face. "That's not true. You've taught me the most important lesson of all." "What's that?" "That a person's worth isn't determined by what others expect from them. It's determined by what they choose to do with their life." David paused in his work, struck by the depth of her words. Over the months, he had learned bits and pieces about her difficult relationship with her father, though she rarely spoke about it directly. He could see the pain she still carried, but he also saw her strength. Their friendship had grown deeper with each passing day. What started as professional courtesy had become genuine care and respect. David found himself looking forward to their conversations, valuing her insights not just as a scientist but as a person. Zara felt the same way. For the first time in her life, she had found someone who saw her as more than just a royal disappointment. David treated her as an equal, listened to her ideas, and made her feel valued for who she truly was. The turning point came when they were selected for a special research mission. New Terra's twin moons created unique electromagnetic fields that affected plant growth in fascinating ways. The colony's leadership wanted them to study these effects at a remote research station in the northern mountains. "It's a 3-day trip," David explained as they prepared for the journey. "The station is fully equipped, and the data we collect could revolutionize our understanding of how alien environments affect biological development." Zara was thrilled. She had been studying the moon cycles and their effects on Cytherian biology for years. This was exactly the kind of work she had always dreamed of doing. They set off early one morning in a small aircraft designed for atmospheric research. The flight over New Terra's landscape was breathtaking. Purple forests stretched as far as the eye could see, broken by silver rivers and crystal formations that reminded Zara of home. "It's beautiful," she whispered, pressing her face to the window. "Wait until you see the view from the research station," David said. "On clear nights you can see both moons perfectly aligned. It's something else." The research station was perched on a cliff overlooking a vast valley. It was small but well equipped, with everything they needed for their studies. They spent the first day setting up their equipment and collecting initial samples. That evening, as they prepared dinner together, Zara realized how comfortable she felt. There was something peaceful about being away from the colony, away from the constant reminders of her diplomatic status. Here she was just Zara, working alongside someone she had come to trust completely. "Can I ask you something personal?" she said as they watched the twin moons rise through the station's observation window. David nodded. "Of course. Do you ever regret taking on the responsibility of being my guardian? I know it wasn't exactly your choice." David was quiet for a moment, considering his answer carefully. "At first I thought it would be a burden," he admitted. "I was told to babysit a royal princess and keep her happy for diplomatic reasons, but you're nothing like what I expected." What did you expect? Someone spoiled and demanding, someone who looked down on humans as inferior. Instead, I got someone brilliant and kind and genuinely curious about everything around her. Zara felt her heart flutter at his words. You see me differently than most people do. How do most people see you? For the first time, Zara found herself opening up about her past. She told him about her father's rejection, about being labeled as defective because she couldn't have children. She talked about the loneliness and shame she had carried for years. David listened without judgment, his expression growing more concerned with each revelation. When she finished, he was quiet for a long time. Your father is wrong, he said finally. Your worth as a person has nothing to do with whether you can have children. You're intelligent, compassionate, and incredibly talented. Any parent should be proud to call you their daughter. Tears welled up in Zara's eyes. She had never heard anyone defend her so fiercely before. But on Cytheria, a woman who can't bear children is considered broken. Then Cytheria is wrong too, David said firmly. There are millions of ways to contribute to the world. Having children is just one of them, and it's not the most important one. Their conversation continued late into the night. David shared his own struggles with loss and guilt over his wife's death. Zara talked about her dreams of making a real difference in the world, of being remembered for something other than her failures. The second day of their research was interrupted by an unexpected storm. The electromagnetic disturbance was too dangerous for their aircraft to navigate, trapping them at the station for an extra day. The colony knows where we are, David assured her, as they watched the purple lightning dance across the sky. They'll send a rescue team once the storm passes. But Zara wasn't worried about being rescued. For the first time in her life, she felt completely free. There were no royal duties, no disappointed looks from her family, no whispered conversations about her failures. There was just her and David, working together and talking about everything and nothing. That evening, as they shared a simple meal by the observation window, something shifted between them. The formal barriers of guardian and charge had long since dissolved. What remained was two people who had found something precious in each other's company. Zara, David said softly. I need to tell you something. She looked up from her meal, noting the serious tone in his voice. What is it? I care about you. More than I should, more than is appropriate given our situation. I've tried to maintain professional boundaries, but what? But I can't stop thinking about you, about your laugh, about the way your eyes light up when you discover something new, about how brave you are despite everything you've been through. Zara's heart raced. She had felt the same connection growing between them but had been afraid to acknowledge it. David, I know it's complicated, he continued. I know there could be serious consequences for both of us, but I had to tell you how I feel. Zara stood up and moved closer to him. Do you want to know a secret? He nodded, his eyes never leaving her face. I've been having the same thoughts about you. You've shown me what it means to be valued, to be respected. You've made me feel like I matter. Their first kiss was gentle and tentative, both of them aware of the line they were crossing. But it felt right in a way that neither of them could deny. For months they had been dancing around their growing feelings, and now those feelings could no longer be contained. Over the next few weeks after they returned from the research station, their relationship deepened in secret. They were careful to maintain their professional demeanor in public, but their private moments were filled with a joy that Zara had never known existed. David introduced her to human concepts of romance and partnership that were completely different from Cytherian customs. He brought her flowers from the colony's gardens, wrote her letters expressing his feelings, and listened to her thoughts and dreams with genuine interest. For the first time in her life, Zara felt truly loved and accepted. Not as a princess, not as a diplomatic asset, but as herself. David saw her flaws and strengths equally and loved her anyway. But their happiness was shadowed by the knowledge that their relationship was forbidden. If discovered, it could end David's career and potentially restart the war between their species. They lived in constant fear of being found out. Then something unexpected happened. Zara began feeling unwell. She was tired all the time, couldn't keep food down, and found herself overwhelmed by smells and sounds that had never bothered her before. At first, she thought it was stress from keeping their relationship secret. But when the symptoms persisted for weeks, David insisted on running some medical tests. "It's probably just an adjustment reaction to New Terra's atmosphere," he said as he drew blood for analysis. "Some Catherians take longer to fully adapt than others." But when the test results came back, they both stared at the screen in complete shock. The impossible had happened. Zara was pregnant. The medical scanners showed clear evidence of new life growing inside her. But this shouldn't have been possible. Every expert on Cytheria had confirmed that she was infertile. Yet here was undeniable proof that they had been wrong. "How is this possible?" Zara whispered, her hand moving instinctively to her stomach. The weeks following Zara's pregnancy discovery were both the happiest and most terrifying of her life. She and David spent countless hours in his private laboratory, running tests, and trying to understand what was happening to her body. The results were fascinating and frightening at the same time. "Look at this," David said one evening, pointing to the latest scan results. "The baby is developing perfectly, but it's showing characteristics of both species. The bone structure is human, but the neural development is distinctly Cytherian." Zara studied the images with wonder. "What does that mean for the child? If I'm right, your baby could have enhanced cognitive abilities from your side and physical resilience from mine. This could be the beginning of something incredible." But despite the scientific marvel, they both knew they were living on borrowed time. Zara's pregnancy was becoming harder to hide. Her Cytherian physiology was adapting in ways that made her skin glow brighter, and her energy levels fluctuated wildly. They had been so careful to keep their relationship secret, meeting only in private places and maintaining professional distance in public. But love has a way of showing itself no matter how hard you try to hide it. The colony's medical chief, Dr. Rebecca Torres, had started noticing changes in Zara's behavior during their routine diplomatic health checks. Zara was more tired than usual and had been requesting strange food combinations that made no sense for normal Cytherian dietary needs. "Princess, I think we should run some additional tests," Dr. Torres said during what was supposed to be a simple checkup. "Your hormone levels are showing some unusual patterns." Zara's heart raced, but she forced herself to remain calm. "I'm sure it's just stress from being away from home for so long. The diplomatic work has been quite demanding." Dr. Torres nodded, but didn't look convinced. "Still, I'd like to be thorough. We want to make sure you're healthy." That night, Zara paced her apartment in panic. "She suspects something," she told David when he arrived for their secret evening meeting. "Dr. Torres is too smart. She's going to figure it out." David tried to reassure her, but he was worried too. "Maybe we should tell her ourselves. She's a good person, and she might be willing to help us. And if she's not, if she reports this to the colony leadership, they'll contact my father immediately." The thought of King Theron learning about her pregnancy filled Zara with dread. She could imagine his rage, his accusations, his demands for her immediate return to Cytheria. Everything good she had found on New Terra would be destroyed. Their worst fears came true 3 days later. Zara was attending a formal diplomatic dinner when suddenly the room began spinning. She felt overwhelming nausea and tried to excuse herself quietly, but before she could reach the door, everything went black. She woke up in the colony's medical facility with Dr. Torres standing over her, holding a data tablet with a very serious expression. "Princess Zara," Dr. Torres said gently, "we need to talk." Zara's mouth went dry. She knew from the doctor's tone that their secret was out. "The tests we ran after you collapsed show that you're pregnant," Dr. Torres continued. "About 12 weeks along, from what I can determine. There was no point in denying it anymore." Zara nodded slowly, tears forming in her eyes. "The father is human, isn't it?" Dr. Torres asked, though it wasn't really a question. Again, Zara nodded. Dr. Torres, sat down heavily in the chair beside the bed. Princess, do you understand what this means? This is the first recorded pregnancy between our species. The political implications alone could restart the war. I know, Zara whispered. But I never thought it was possible. Everyone told me I could never have children. Well, they were wrong. Your body has adapted to New Terra's environment in ways we never imagined possible. The electromagnetic fields here have triggered genetic changes that allowed conception to occur. Within hours, the news had spread through the colony's leadership. David was brought in for questioning, his face pale with worry and fear. The colony's Governor Administrator Walsh called an emergency session to discuss the situation. This is a disaster, Walsh said, pacing the conference room. We have a diplomatic guest who is pregnant with a human child. The Catherian Empire will see this as an attack on their royal family. It's not an attack, David said firmly. It's two people who fell in love and are now facing the consequences of that love. Love? Walsh turned on him angrily. You were supposed to be her guardian, her protector. Instead, you've potentially destroyed the peace process between our species. Dr. Torres spoke up. With respect, Administrator, what's done is done. The question now is how we handle this situation. Meanwhile, the news was traveling faster than they could control it. Someone in the medical facility had leaked the information, and within 24 hours reports were reaching both the human government on Earth and the Catherian Empire. King Theron received the news while holding court on Catheria. The messenger, who brought the report, was visibly shaking as he delivered the information. Your Majesty, the messenger said, we have received word from New Terra. Princess Zara she is with child. The entire throne room fell silent. King Theron's face went through a series of expressions, confusion, disbelief, and then pure rage. Impossible, he roared. My daughter is infertile. This must be some kind of human trick. The reports are confirmed by multiple sources. Your Majesty. The princess is indeed pregnant, and the father appears to be her human guardian. King Theron's rage was like nothing the court had ever seen. He swept everything off the table beside his throne, sending crystal goblets crashing to the floor. How dare they corrupt my daughter? How dare they manipulate her condition for their own purposes? In his mind, the only explanation was that the humans had somehow forced this pregnancy on Zara. The idea that she might have chosen this path willingly was incomprehensible to him. Prepare the fleet, he commanded. We leave for New Terra immediately. I will bring my daughter home and end this abomination before it goes any further. Princess Lyra, who had been standing quietly in the corner, stepped forward. Father, perhaps we should consider silence. King Theron cut her off. Your sister has been poisoned against her own family. This human child she carries is a threat to our entire bloodline. But Lyra had been thinking about her sister's situation more carefully than anyone realized. She had always suspected that Zara's infertility diagnosis had been influenced by politics rather than pure medical science. Too many people had benefited from Zara being removed from the line of succession. Back on New Terra, Zara was struggling with her own fears and emotions. The secret she and David had protected so carefully was now public knowledge. She felt exposed and vulnerable, but also strangely relieved that she no longer had to hide. What happens now? She asked David as they sat together in her apartment, waiting for the colony leadership to decide their fate. I don't know, he admitted. But whatever happens, we face it together. Zara placed her hand on her still flat stomach. I never thought I would be able to have a child. For years I believed I was broken, defective. Now I'm carrying a baby that shouldn't exist according to everything we know about our species. Maybe that's exactly what both our worlds need, David said softly. A child who proves that our differences aren't barriers, they're opportunities. Their conversation was interrupted by a knock at the door. Administrator Walsh entered with a grim expression, followed by Dr. Torres and several security personnel. Princess Zara, Walsh said formally. I'm afraid I have some difficult news. Your father has been informed of your condition. He's demanding your immediate return to Catheria and is threatening military action if we don't comply. Zara felt her blood turn cold. He's coming here? His fleet departed Cytheria 6 hours ago. They'll arrive in 3 days. The weight of the situation crashed down on Zara. Her father was coming to take her home, to end her pregnancy and to punish David for what he would see as a betrayal of trust. Everything she had built on New Terra was about to be destroyed. There's more, Walsh continued. The human government on Earth has been notified as well. They're sending their own diplomatic team to handle the situation. What does that mean for us? David asked. It means this is no longer a colonial matter. This is now an interplanetary incident that could determine the future of human-Cytherian relations. Dr. Torres stepped forward. Princess, there is one option we haven't discussed. The Colony Council has voted to offer you asylum if you choose to stay. We can protect you and your child, but it would mean defying your father directly. Zara looked at David, then at the officials surrounding her. For the first time in her life, she had a real choice to make. She could return to Cytheria and face her father's wrath, likely losing both her child and her freedom. Or she could stay on New Terra and fight for the life she had built, knowing it might start a war. I need time to think, she said quietly. You have until your father arrives, Walsh replied. 3 days to decide the fate of 2 worlds. As the officials left, Zara and David sat in stunned silence. The happy bubble they had created around their relationship had finally burst. Now they faced the reality of what their love had cost, and what it might cost in the future. Whatever you decide, David said, taking her hand, I'll support you. Zara squeezed his hand tightly. I'm not the same person who arrived here. The morning sky over New Terra was filled with the massive shapes of Cytherian warships. King Theron had arrived with enough firepower to level the entire colony if he chose to. The sight sent chills through every human on the planet. Zara watched from her apartment window as the royal fleet took position in orbit. She recognized her father's command ship, the golden vessel that had once filled her with pride, but now looked like a symbol of everything that had made her life miserable. He brought the entire war fleet, she whispered to David, who stood beside her with his arm around her shoulders. He's trying to intimidate us, David replied, but she could hear the worry in his voice. Within hours, King Theron's shuttle landed at the colony's main spaceport. He emerged wearing his full royal battle armor, flanked by his personal guard and followed by Princess Lyra. The message was clear. He had come as a warrior, not a diplomat. Administrator Walsh met them at the landing pad with full ceremony, trying to maintain some semblance of diplomatic protocol despite the threatening circumstances. Your Majesty, Walsh said with a formal bow, welcome to New Terra. I hope we can resolve this situation peacefully. King Theron's expression was cold as ice. There is nothing to resolve. I have come to collect my daughter and end this disgrace. Where is she? Princess Zara is resting. She has requested time to prepare for your meeting. I did not come here to wait, Theron snapped. Bring her to me immediately. But Zara had other plans. Instead of hiding in her apartment as everyone expected, she walked into the colony's main conference hall where the negotiations were taking place. She wore a simple human dress instead of her royal robes, and her pregnancy was now clearly visible. The moment King Theron saw her, his face turned purple with rage. Look what they have done to you, he said in their native language. Look how they have corrupted my daughter. No one corrupted me, father, Zara replied calmly, also speaking in Cytherian so the humans couldn't understand. I made my own choices. Choices? He roared. You were supposed to be incapable of bearing children. How do you explain this abomination you carry? Zara switched to the human language, forcing the conversation into the open. This child is not an abomination. It's a miracle. And I won't let you or anyone else harm it. The humans in the room shifted uncomfortably as they watched the family drama unfold. David stepped closer to Zara, a protective gesture that didn't go unnoticed by the king. You, Theron said, pointing at David with barely controlled fury. You are the one responsible for this. You took advantage of my daughter's condition. Your Majesty, David said respectfully but firmly, I love your daughter. What happened between us was mutual and consensual. Love? King Theron laughed bitterly. You manipulated a vulnerable woman for your own purposes. You knew she was supposed to be infertile, so you used her without consequences. That's not true, Zara interjected. David didn't know about my condition until I told him, and neither of us expected this pregnancy to be possible. Princess Lyra had been quiet throughout the exchange, but now she stepped forward. Father, perhaps we should listen to what Zara has to say. Silence. Theron turned on his younger daughter. I will not have both my daughters corrupted by human lies. But Lyra continued speaking. I've been doing research since we received the news. I've discovered some interesting facts about Zara's original medical diagnosis. Zara looked at her sister in surprise. What kind of facts? The doctors who declared you infertile were all appointed by Father's advisors. The tests they ran were limited and didn't account for environmental factors that could trigger genetic changes. King Theron's expression grew dangerous. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting that the diagnosis was influenced by politics rather than medical accuracy. Too many people benefited from removing Zara from the line of succession. The accusation hung in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. Zara stared at her sister, then at her father, pieces of a puzzle starting to fall into place. You knew, she said slowly. You knew there was a chance I could have children, but you let everyone believe I was broken. Your condition was confirmed by the finest medical minds in the Empire, Theron said, but his voice lacked its earlier conviction. No, Lyra said firmly. It was confirmed by doctors who told you what you wanted to hear. Doctors who were more concerned with political stability than medical truth. The human observers watched this family revelation with fascination and growing concern. Administrator Walsh realized that this was about much more than a diplomatic incident. It was about royal succession and decades of deception. Dr. Torres stepped forward. Your Majesty, if I may offer some scientific perspective. Princess Zara's pregnancy has shown us that Catherian biology is far more adaptable than previously understood. The electromagnetic fields of New Terra triggered genetic changes that allowed conception to occur. What are you saying? Theron demanded. I'm saying that your daughter was never truly infertile. Her body just needed the right conditions to activate dormant genetic sequences. This suggests that many Catherians diagnosed as infertile might actually be able to have children under different circumstances. The implications of this revelation were staggering. If Dr. Torres was right, then King Theron's empire had potentially hundreds of infertile women who could actually bear children. The population crisis that had been plaguing Catheria for decades might have a solution. But Theron wasn't ready to accept this possibility. Even if what you say is true, it doesn't change the fact that my daughter has betrayed her family and her people by carrying a human child. This child could be the bridge between our species, Zara said passionately. It could represent a new future where humans and Catherians work together instead of fighting. Or it could be a monster that belongs to neither world. Theron replied coldly. David had heard enough. Your Majesty, with all due respect, you're talking about your own grandchild. This baby is part of your bloodline too. That thing is no grandchild of mine, Theron spat. The words hit Zara like a physical blow. She placed her hands protectively over her stomach. Then you leave me no choice, Father. I formally request asylum from the human government. I will not return to Catheria to have my child destroyed. The conference room erupted in shocked murmurs. A royal princess requesting asylum from another species was unprecedented in galactic politics. King Theron's face turned deadly pale. If you do this, you will no longer be my daughter. You will be a traitor to your own people. Then so be it, Zara said, though tears were streaming down her face. I would rather be a traitor than a victim. Administrator Walsh stood up. The colony of New Terra formally grants Princess Zara asylum and protection. We will not allow her to be taken against her will. You dare defy the Catherian Empire? Theron roared. We dare protect an innocent woman and her unborn child, Walsh replied calmly. Princess Lyra looked between her father and sister, her heart breaking. Father, please. Don't let your pride destroy our family completely. But King Theron was beyond reason. I came here offering one last chance for redemption. Since that offer has been rejected, I will give you all one final ultimatum. He stood up, his royal presence filling the room with menace. You have 7 days to hand over my daughter. If she is not returned to Catherian custody by then, I will consider this an act of war. I will destroy this colony and everyone in it. Father, no, Lyra cried out. The choice is yours, Theron said, looking directly at Administrator Walsh. One woman's life against the lives of your entire colony. With that, he turned and walked out, leaving behind a room full of shocked and frightened people. His ultimatum hung over them like a death sentence. Zara collapsed into a chair, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what had just happened. She had defied her father and potentially condemned thousands of innocent people to death. What have I done? She whispered. David knelt beside her chair. You stood up for yourself and our child. You did what was right. But at what cost? She asked, looking around at the faces of the humans who were now in danger because of her choices. Administrator Walsh addressed the room. We have 7 days to find a solution. I'm calling an emergency session of the Colony Council and requesting immediate support from Earth. As people began filing out to make preparations, Princess Lyra approached her sister. I'm staying, Lyra said quietly. What? Zara looked up in surprise. I'm not going back with Father. Someone needs to try to talk sense into him, and someone needs to support you. Lyra, you could lose everything. I've already lost too much by staying silent for too long, Lyra replied. It's time I stood up for what's right too. The sisters embraced for the first time in years, both knowing that the next 7 days would determine not just their fate, but the fate of both their peoples. Outside, King Theron's fleet maintained its threatening position, a constant reminder that time was running out. The peaceful colony that had given Zara a new life was now a potential battlefield, and she was the reason why. But as frightened as she was, Zara also felt something she had never experienced before: the determination to fight for her own happiness and the future of her child. The scared princess who had arrived on New Terra was gone forever. In her place stood a woman ready to face whatever came next. The 6th night of King Theron's ultimatum was the longest of Zara's life. She had been experiencing strong pains for hours, and David was growing increasingly worried. Dr. Torres had been monitoring her condition closely, but everyone knew that a hybrid birth would be unlike anything they had dealt with before. The baby is coming, Dr. Torres announced after her latest examination. We need to get her to the medical facility immediately. As they rushed through the colony's corridors, Zara couldn't help but think about the timing. Her child was choosing to be born on the very night before her father's deadline. It felt like destiny was taking control of the situation. I'm scared, she admitted to David as another wave of pain hit her. You're the strongest person I know, he replied, holding her hand tightly. You and our baby are going to be fine. The medical facility had been prepared for this moment for days. Dr. Torres had assembled a team that included both human doctors and Catherian healers who had arrived with Princess Lyra. Working together, they represented the kind of cooperation that Zara hoped her child would inspire. Princess Lyra had refused to leave her sister's side throughout the week. Despite their father's anger, she had made it clear that she supported Zara's choices. Now she stood in the delivery room, offering encouragement in their native language. You can do this, sister, Lyra whispered. You're about to give birth to the future. The labor was difficult and lasted through the night. Zara's Catherian physiology was adapting to deliver a hybrid child, and the medical team had to improvise solutions they had never encountered before. But finally, as the sun began to rise over New Terra, they heard the sound they had all been waiting for. A baby's cry filled the room. It's a girl, Dr. Torres announced with tears in her eyes. And she's perfect. The baby was unlike anything anyone had ever seen. She had her mother's luminescent skin, but it was softer and warmer than typical Catherian coloring. Her eyes shifted between the violet of her mother's people and the brown of her father's, as if she couldn't decide which world she belonged to. She was clearly healthy and strong, with the enhanced vital signs that had been predicted. "Hello, little one," Zara whispered as her daughter was placed in her arms. "Welcome to the universe." David looked down at his daughter with wonder and love. "She's beautiful. What should we call her?" "Stella," Zara said without hesitation. "She's our little star, bridging two worlds." But even as they celebrated this miracle, everyone knew that King Theron's deadline was only hours away. The king had spent the week refusing all attempts at negotiation, maintaining his position that Zara must return to Cytheria or face the consequences. What they didn't know was that something remarkable had happened to Zara during the pregnancy and birth. Dr. Torres discovered it during her post-delivery examination. "This is incredible," she said, studying the medical scans. "Zara, your reproductive system has been completely transformed. Not only are you no longer infertile, but your body has developed enhanced capabilities." "What do you mean?" Zara asked, still exhausted from the delivery. "The pregnancy triggered genetic changes that have made you more fertile than most women of either species. You could potentially have children with humans or Cytherians now. This isn't just about one baby. This is about the future of both our peoples." Princess Lyra understood the implications immediately. "Father needs to know about this. This changes everything." The news reached King Theron just as he was preparing to issue the order to attack the colony. His advisors had been urging him to carry out his threat, but the birth of his granddaughter had shaken him more than he wanted to admit. When he learned about Zara's transformed condition, he found himself facing a dilemma he hadn't expected. His empire had been struggling with declining birth rates for decades. If Zara's experience could be replicated, it might solve their population crisis. But his pride and anger were still burning strong. He couldn't simply admit he had been wrong about everything. The moment of truth came when Princess Lyra requested a private meeting with her father. She had spent the night holding her new niece, and the experience had given her the courage to confront the truth that had been hidden for too long. "Father," she said as she entered his temporary command center, "I have something to confess." King Theron looked up from his battle plans. "What is it?" "I've known for years that Zara's infertility diagnosis was questionable. I've been researching our family's medical history, and I found evidence that several of our ancestors were considered infertile until they encountered specific environmental conditions that triggered fertility." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that Zara was never truly broken. She just needed the right circumstances to awaken her genetic potential. And now she's given birth to a child who could be the key to saving both our peoples." Lyra paused, then delivered the blow that would change everything. "Father, I formally renounce my claim to the throne. Zara should be your heir, not me. She's proven that she can bear children, and more importantly, she's shown wisdom and courage that I lack." King Theron stared at his younger daughter in shock. "You would give up the crown?" "I never wanted it," Lyra admitted. "I only accepted it because Zara was pushed aside. But she's the one who should rule. She's the one who can lead our people into a new era." Before the king could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the fleet. Something was happening on the planet's surface that demanded his immediate attention. The colony's long-range sensors had detected massive ships approaching from Earth. The human government had finally arrived with their own fleet, not to fight, but to protect their colony and support their newest citizen. Admiral Chen led the Earth fleet, and his first communication was directed at King Theron. "Your Majesty, we come in peace, but we will defend our people and Princess Zara if necessary. We propose a diplomatic solution that benefits everyone." Faced with the prospect of fighting both the colony and Earth's military, King Theron realized that his ultimatum had failed. But more importantly, he was beginning to understand that he might have misjudged the entire situation. The turning point came when Admiral Chen made an unexpected request. "Your Majesty, we would like you to meet your granddaughter." An hour later, King Theron found himself standing in the colony's medical facility, looking down at the smallest person who had ever challenged his authority. Baby Stella was sleeping peacefully in her mother's arms, completely unaware of the political storm surrounding her birth. "She's perfect," he whispered, his voice cracking with emotion. For the first time, he truly looked at his eldest daughter. Zara was glowing with health and happiness, holding her child with confidence and love. This wasn't the broken, defeated woman he remembered. This was a strong, capable leader who had found her purpose. "I was wrong," he said quietly. "About everything." Zara looked up at her father with tears in her eyes. "You can still make it right." What followed was the most remarkable political transformation in galactic history. King Theron publicly acknowledged that his daughter had been misdiagnosed and mistreated. He announced that Zara would be welcomed back as crown princess, with the understanding that she would help establish new medical and diplomatic protocols between their species. But Zara had conditions of her own. She would serve as a bridge between worlds, but she would remain on New Terra with David and Stella. Their child would be raised as a citizen of both planets, free to choose her own path when she came of age. The ceremony that followed was unlike anything either species had ever witnessed. Zara was crowned as crown princess in a joint ceremony held simultaneously on New Terra and Kytheria, connected by advanced holographic technology. David was appointed as the first director of interspecies medical research, tasked with studying the genetic changes that had made Stella's birth possible. King Theron, humbled by his mistakes, used the occasion to announce sweeping reforms in Kytherian society. Women would no longer be judged solely by their ability to bear children, and medical diagnoses would be subject to multiple reviews and environmental considerations. The most moving moment came when he publicly apologized to his daughter. "Zara, you have shown me what true strength looks like. You faced rejection with grace, found love despite obstacles, and created life where none was thought possible. You are everything a ruler should be." As the ceremonies concluded, representatives from dozens of other species arrived to learn about the breakthrough in interspecies reproduction. What had started as a diplomatic crisis had become the foundation for a new era of cooperation and understanding. The final scene of this remarkable story showed Zara and David walking through a garden that featured plants from both their worlds. Baby Stella slept peacefully in her father's arms while her mother tended to flowers that shouldn't have been able to grow together, but somehow thrived in New Terra's unique environment. "Do you think she'll choose to be human or Kytherian when she grows up?" David asked. Zara smiled, watching her daughter's face shift between the features of both species. "I think she'll choose to be herself, and maybe that's exactly what the universe needs." King Theron, watching from a distance, felt pride swell in his chest. His daughter had not only found happiness, but had also secured the future of both civilizations. The princess he had once called worthless had become the most valuable person in